climate change or whether it's high cost fertilizer, all the things that are coming at them at once.
It's almost a double negative on me here.
That's not even close to correct.
Well, that's from the Government Accountability Office.
I'm telling you right now, you're going to find people not very excited about the notion of a national database.
I think they're climate smart projects as well.
Well, fair enough.
So we differ on that.
Special fuel for airplanes. Like I heard some people want to dilute it.
So I'm going to accuse you of hiring good people.
You're from Iowa, so you know what I'm talking about.
It pains me to agree with Governor DeSantis on anything, but I will lab meat. And I find that really kind of very unattractive, basically.
I'd like to address some of the work policies at the Department of Agriculture. We're just weeks away from the 4-year anniversary of federal buildings being temporarily closed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And as you know, GAO says that your headquarters has a space utilization rate of just 11%. It has gotten so bad that one of your employees went so far as to write me an anonymous letter that I do have with me today, Madam Chair, and I would like to submit that to the record, please.
So ordered without objection.
And let me read to you just a few sentences, and I quote, "The vast majority of USDA employees are not working in person. On the occasions I have gone to USDA headquarters in Washington, D.C., it resembles a ghost town." Your employee then goes on to say, "Remote work and telework employees are often unreachable and do not respond to simple email questions for hours." So with that, Mr. Secretary, knowing your own staff is recognizing issues with the policies that are currently put into place, how many days per week do you require your DC-based managers and employees covered by collective bargaining agreements to be physically in the office?
A majority of the week.
Okay, and what would that majority of the week be?
For some, it's 3 days, and for some, it's 4 days.
Okay, and yet the occupancy is 11%.
No, it's not,
according
Senator.
to.
Senator, that is not correct.
Okay.
That is not correct. That's not even close to correct.
Well, that's from the Government Accountability
No,
Office.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. There we go. So hi, it's a pleasure to be here. And now, I meet with a lot of farmers from my state, which happens to be Pennsylvania, and they have, and it is actually our top business in Pennsylvania. I'm sure you know that. So, and there are things that come up that may not be perfectly germane to certain kinds of discussions here, but I just really want to bring about some of these issues that I hear a lot about when I meet with the trade groups and other farmers all across. And one of the same kind of argument is that they need to have support in order to remain in business and to be profitable, and they're under siege by a lot of different things. And one thing I wanted to talk about now, and I hear this again and again, is concerns, and I share those concerns, is foreign companies, or excuse me, foreign countries owning our land. You know, even though they're 10th in terms of ownership, but they effectively own about half the size of Rhode Island.
Well, my concern about China is twofold. One is the location of whatever they own, whether it represents a security issue. We found recently the desire to buy land that was close to a defense installation. I have concerns about that. China is also our #1 ag customer from an export perspective. And when I was meeting with the agriculture minister, he inquired about certain laws that were being passed in the United States, which means that they are sensitive to what they're hearing. And the question is whether or not that will impact their buying decisions and whether that matters to anybody on the Ag Committee or anybody in the Congress.
Oh, to your knowledge, do American farmers or companies, are they buying Chinese land?
No.
Why not?
China doesn't provide that.
Yeah, they don't allow
and
that.
state.
Oh, well, yeah,
states-
so if they don't allow us and we allow them, that doesn't seem.
Well, states basically can pass laws to prevent foreign ownership, and many states have done that.
Okay. All right. Well, moving on. But again, and again, I'm not really concerned that Canada owns a lot. You know, they have some of that. Or I'm not really worried that Denmark might. But again, China has been very clear that it is certainly not an ally, and it's certainly in a kind of category. And now they don't even allow us to have that kind of same situation in their nation. And I think it's a concern, and I hear that a lot in my state. So it pains me to agree with Governor DeSantis on anything, but I will, that he is opposed to lab meat. And I find that really kind of very unattractive, basically. And now that's another challenge as well, too. And now that's one more product or movement or whatever that is going to impact our farmers that raise beef or other kinds of chickens. So really, is that really can you be calling that actual meat, or is that, what kind of category is that kind of a thing?
Well, I think we are currently grappling with this issue right now in terms of labeling. What do you call it? If the biological process is actually equivalent to what takes place with livestock, the argument is that it ought to be able to be called meat. However, consumers, I think, need to understand and appreciate the differentiation between cell-cultured meat and livestock that's produced on the farm. And that's what we're dealing with now, trying to figure out how do you distinguish so that when consumers make the choice, they know what they're buying.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a Luddite or anything like that, but I find that very different. I think I would, but I do think it is going to have another impact and a challenge for our farmers. But anyways.
Obviously, Kansas coming off back-to-back years of drought, and we've had to apply for a more disaster assistance. And we probably got more complaints about the response and the rollout of this latest round of disaster assistance than any other one issue in the last several years. Specifically, we were seeing some small absentee landowners were getting disaster assistance at a greater per acre rate than our full-time farmer families were. And this progressive way of doing this seems to be very complicated. It seemed to be very slow. I would ask you to consider abandoning this progressive payment factor in the future.
Senator, it's interesting because I'm looking at the numbers for Kansas. 45,132 of your producers got more money as a result of this progressive factor. 10,217 got less. So 82% of your producers actually benefited from this effort. Having said that, the way to avoid this, Senator, is very simple. Provide the resources fully and completely for the disaster. It was a $10 to $12 billion disaster. We told Congress that. You all gave us a little over $3 billion.
We actually gave you $3.7 billion, which I think was more than adequate to cover the situation. I think it's unfair to punish those just because they have more acres.
I think there's still work to be done, and we're continuing to do work on the rule that you mentioned. And I think it is obviously appropriate for us to craft it in a way which we believe responds to any of the concerns that courts have raised in the past.
I'm digesting that answer. So you don't feel that if it has this harm to competition, it's almost a double negative on me here. Do you think it's in violation of the Circuit Court precedent by not requiring harm to competition to bring an action under the Packers and Stockyards Act?
I think it's incumbent upon us to craft it in a way that responds to whatever concerns have been raised by courts in the past to avoid those problems, and at the same time to provide a more balanced marketplace for producers and
Thank you.
integrators.
Thank you. I think I would just close by making a comment that if we want to guarantee affordable food, access to affordable food for everybody, we're spending plenty of money on the back end, but I'm concerned as we work on a farm bill going forward that we're not spending enough money on the front end to make sure that our farmers are able to plant next year's crop. That's not really a question, it's just a statement.
Approximately 30 million students are eligible to receive free or reduced price school meals. However, over the summer months, they often don't have adequate access to meals. Hunger doesn't go on a vacation. How many students are reached by these summer lunch programs?
You want to know how many of the states that have agreed?
Yes.
21 million out of the 30 million or so that are eligible. There are 13 states that have yet to agree to participate in the program.
When I talk to farmers in Georgia who have applied for this assistance, they tell me that they're trying to plan for the next planting season, and they need to know when they can expect assistance. What is your timeline for getting this financial assistance into the pockets of farmers?
By last count, there are nearly 60,000 applications that have been received. So now the administrators, the outside administrators, have got to go through the process of evaluating those applications. Our hope is that we get resources out the door sometime in the summer.
Sometime this summer.
Why do you think that farmers are leaving the industry and the next generation doesn't want to keep farming? I mean, do you have any answer to that for our farmers?
I have several answers, I think. One is that there's been a focus on production. We're talking about a commodity-based system. We've encouraged farmers to produce. We've suggested you got to get big or get out. That's been suggested. What we need to do, in my view, is to create alternative market opportunities for those small and mid-sized producers so that they aren't necessarily competing solely and completely in a commodity-based market, which is not really designed for them. That's why it's important to have local and regional food systems. That's why it's important to invest in renewable energy and create opportunities for that energy to be sold to the local co-op. That's why it's important to have climate-smart agriculture so that you get a value-added proposition. It's why it's important for us to create new products like sustainable aviation fuel that can create new commodities with agricultural waste. There's a multitude of things that we can and are doing to basically create a better opportunity in the future.
What I just don't want to see is what's going on in Europe, you know, with all the farmers driving their tractors up and down the roads.
Completely different approach.
I understand that, but it's all about regulations at the end of the day. And the farmers in Alabama, you know, it seemed like every other phone call I get is about something different that they're having to face in terms of whether it's climate change or whether it's high cost of fertilizer, all the things that are coming at them at once.
You've stated Congress should intervene to prevent chaos in the marketplace resulting from Prop 12 and other similar initiatives. Can you describe the marketplace disruption you foresee if Congress does not choose to address the Prop 12 and similar initiatives?
Well, you've got 50 states that essentially could make decisions based on their own individual value system and based on their own agricultural economy. You know, we literally as a country tried this at the beginning of this country with the Articles of Confederation, where we gave states basically the ability to make decisions, and the reality was it was chaos, which is why we have a constitution. Look, I totally understand why Californians would want to regulate what happens within the four borders of the corners of their state in terms of their own producers, but I don't think the Supreme Court, when it decided that pork producers had a choice to participate in the California market or not, understood the pork market. When you're dealing with 12% of the pork market in one state, there is not a choice between doing business with in California and not in California. You're essentially going to it's going to be driven by that requirement, which is going to make it very, very difficult. So I think at some point in time, somebody's got to provide some degree of consistency and clarity. Otherwise, you are just inviting 50 different states to do 50 different iterations of this. And if farmers, they don't need the chaos, they need clarity and certainty.
So EFRP sounds like a viable option for landowners in Mississippi, but I have heard some challenges and concerns about the program, such as the amount of time that it takes to receive cost share payments following the disaster. Some landowners need financing up front to carry out emergency measures, and without it, they often never take action. Only the FSA National Office, not FSA County Office committees, can authorize this EFRP for drought and insect infestations, which makes getting that authorization potentially more time-consuming as well. So my question to you, Mr. Secretary, are there ways USDA and our Congress can improve the overall quality of assistance provided through EFRP?
I think the answer to your question is yes. There's a concern, I think, about transitioning it back to the county, because then it's difficult to keep track of the resources that are being allocated county to county. That's why it has to sort of funnel up to the national office. But certainly we can look for ways in which we can streamline that process. We can also, I think, look and should be looking at a way in which we can perhaps adjust the cost share issue in terms of advance payments, so that work isn't delayed. I think those are two things that we ought to be doing.
Did you look at the GAO's recommendations?
I understand, yeah, absolutely, but they've got nothing to do, they really don't do much in terms of the self-reporting aspect of this issue.
So if the bill were amended to take care of self-reporting, would that be what you'd need to see to make it more effective?
That would be a way of ensuring that you actually were getting the information that you
that's
seek.
why we have hearings, to take a good bill and make it to where
But I'm telling you,
it might be
Senator,
better. If that happened, would you be okay with what?
I'd be fine with it, but I'm telling you right now, you're going to find people not very excited about the notion of a national database where every real estate transaction that takes place in this country is going to be in the federal government's purview. But that's the problem with these issues is it's so easy to sort of demagogue them. I'm saying you do, but it's a self-reporting system. So if you don't want to report, you take your chances.
Well, I think it's something that we could probably do to where it wouldn't end up having to be a national database, to where you could find it and just preempt it in some fashion. So
and make sure that when you're doing that if it's an LLC or an LLP, that you have the ability to look into and go deeper.
Because they can hide the true owner through that. That's true.
Then the question is, well, how much of an ownership interest are you concerned about? What if it's a 1% ownership interest?
Local offices in a state recognize the need and prioritization of other resources, as in water quality and quantity. I'm concerned, I'm saddened that those are not recognized here by the federal government, by USDA anymore, as being important for the state of Nebraska.
Well, I think that's not what they're saying. Well,
We're
could argue about this
yeah,
back and
we're
forth. But
talking
it's not
back
about
and forth.
they're not being important. They are not necessarily climate smart.
We'll have a discussion sometime on that, because you understand the importance of water
Right,
resources
but-
in the state of Nebraska and the value we have for that resource.
Absolutely, and that's why they're part of the Western Water Initiative, $1.9 billion being made available.
I think they're climate smart projects as well.
Well, fair enough.
So we differ on that. We differ on that.
Special fuel for airplanes that grain farmers have a big interest in, but your role in that, and then can we preserve feedstocks being primarily used there without diluting it? Like I heard some people want to dilute it.
I think we have two roles at USDA with reference to sustainable aviation fuel. One is to advocate for a rule that allows a broad array of feedstocks, including the traditional feedstocks that are used for biofuels, to qualify for the tax credits and for the incentives, so that it's financially feasible to use ethanol, for example. That's part of my responsibility, is to articulate the need, the science behind that. I think we've been successful in getting the GREET model incorporated in this process. I think we're now in the process of talking about climate smart agriculture, and we're going to continue to pound the table on that. The second responsibility is for USDA to also provide the science and the data behind the availability of feedstock, the logistics for the supply chain, how you can accelerate adoption and commercialization. I was in Georgia recently at the first commercial scale plant. We need to get to 36 billion gallons. That plant was a 10 million gallon plant. So obviously, we have to accelerate dramatically the commercialization and availability. So we need to figure out the tools that we can use at USDA, our loan programs and so forth, to try to accelerate that.
I don't have a complaint. We have the best USDA people in Vermont. We're so grateful for that. So I'm going to accuse you of hiring good people. I hope you don't take that the wrong way. I just want you to comment on, do you have any suggestions that might help us make it more possible for more farms, particularly our smaller farms that are under such pressure, to access USDA programs like REAP?
Well, I will say that we've already done over 5,800 REAP grants as a result of the IRA, and we're getting the word out about it. I think you're going to continue to see thousands of more of those grants. We recently announced resources for small distributive wind projects. Now, there's an example of an opportunity for farmers and for those who are in the small distribution wind distribution system to get the word out about REAP, which will allow farmers to utilize 1 or 2 megawatt opportunities.
You know, we listen to farmers all the time, and they do want some of these programs. They want more funding for the programs. I really think, again, emphasizing farmer-friendly being so important. You're from Iowa, so you know what I'm talking about. Cattlemen, how do we get more transparency and and they're doing well right now, but boy, they suffered for a long time before they got these markets. But they are doing better now, and I hope it continues for our cattle producers for a while. But how do we continue, and you know the concentration, I won't even go into all that on account of time, but what do we do to improve pricing, competition, and transparency?
Price discovery, greater transparency, more processing capacity at the local and regional level.
You know that small farmers who raise animals more humanely from around the country filed a brief with the Supreme Court in support of Prop 12, and the Supreme Court actually cited that brief from American small farmers in its decision. The farmers argue that humane treatment laws like Prop 12 create actually a lot of market opportunities. And this is in light that in the 2022 USDA Ag Census shows that we have lost 9,000 hog farmers since 2017. These independent hog farmers, many of them in business for years or generations, have been driven out of business. And we should give these laws a chance to create the market opportunities for farmers that are willing to be humane, and it supports really the small farming model. So my question really, Mr. Vilsack, to put it simply, is, you know, shouldn't we allow these, at least give a chance to create the market opportunities for these farmers and for our small farmers in America?
Senator, I have no problem with a state essentially directing how their farmers in that state should operate. They clearly should have the right to do that. I think the challenge is when they essentially try to extend that to other producers. And the court basically made the decision that this wasn't going to discriminate against hog producers because they had a choice. I'm not sure how much of a choice they actually have in terms of markets. And that's, frankly, we're trying to create more choice by expanding local and regional processing. So my concern is that if every state does what California does, then there's not going to be any consistency at all in the marketplace, and it's going to be very difficult for producers to know precisely what the rules of the game are.